A man on the verge of freezing to death, in order to survive, used a dagger to cut a bullet in half, but what spilled out were just a few drops of black water. Helpless, the egg picked up another bullet. Fortunately, the egg was lucky. The inside of this bullet had not a single drop of water. Trembling, he poured out the gunpowder, then took a branch from nearby, broke it into small pieces, and placed it on top. Next, the egg took out another bullet and started hammering it with his dagger. But by this time, he was trembling uncontrollably from the cold, unable to concentrate, and completely drenched. Fortunately, perseverance pays off, and just as he was about to freeze to death, he finally managed to start a fire. But the crisis wasn't over yet. The egg had to eliminate all danger before the bounty hunters arrived. He then removed his soaked clothes, with sharp pain continuously emanating from the bullet hole in his arm. To survive, the egg knew he had to do something. After gulping down a large swig of alcohol, he summoned all his courage. He poured the alcohol onto the wound to disinfect it, and the sheer pain made him cry out. The egg quickly used the bottle to muffle his cries, fearing the hunters would hear him. But the agony from the wound was almost unbearable. The egg rubbed his dagger against his pants repeatedly. After steeling himself, he aligned the blade tip with his wound and painfully pried out the bullet. The egg collapsed on the ground in agony. After resting for a moment, he heated the knife in the fire to stop the bleeding. He bit into his fallen sock, then, after a glance at the wound, he took the red-hot knife out of the fire. After a brief hesitation, the egg pressed the searing blade to his wound. The sound of sizzling flesh filled the air, along with the smell of burnt meat, and the egg screamed in agony. After this ordeal, he collapsed into the snow and passed out. Unbeknownst to him, his actions alerted the bounty hunters. They smelled something unfamiliar in the air and quickly approached the egg's location. As if they had a sixth sense, the egg suddenly awoke from a nightmare, realizing he had wasted too much time. He hurriedly dressed and walked deeper into the forest, but after only a few steps, he noticed his footprints. To throw off the bounty hunters, he carefully tiptoed back. He returned to his base, made a wide circle around it, and then used a pine branch to sweep away his real footprints, hoping to conceal his tracks. Soon, however, the egg sensed that something was off. He realized that constantly running would eventually get him caught. He turned and looked up at a towering tree and devised a perfect plan. Meanwhile, the hunters also found his trail. Seeing the messy footprints in the snow, they deduced that the egg was deliberately trying to confuse them. They split into 5 groups to catch him as quickly as possible. The egg hid in a large tree to save his life, watching as the hunters slowly walked into his trap. He pulled out his dagger, ready to drop it on the hunter's head as soon as they spotted him, but luckily, the hunters didn't see him. The egg let out a sigh of relief, but just then, one hunter noticed wood chips and footprints near the tree roots. He took off his hat and looked up, causing the egg to freeze in fear. Blood from the egg's wound began to drip down from the tree. As the hunter looked up, the egg, frozen and barely conscious, lost his footing and fell out of the tree. Thankfully, he landed on a fat man, cushioning his fall. The egg pulled out his knife, took the fat man's gun, and stripped him of his clothes, but still felt cold. So, he sliced open the man's belly to warm his hands inside. Meanwhile, the other bounty hunters found nothing. They blew a whistle to regroup, but soon noticed one of their men was missing. Alarmed, they quickly found the fat man's body. Everyone was shocked. The egg didn't dare stop running until he reached a house. He saw a saddle hanging on the fence and planned to steal the horse, but he was so exhausted that he nearly fainted. A kind girl saw him and quickly called her father. They helped the egg into the house, tended to his wounds, and let him rest. The egg wanted to buy their horse, but lacking money, he instead stole it during the night while the family slept. At dawn, the hunters arrived, taking out their anger on the innocent family. Fortunately, they quickly left to continue chasing the egg. The hunters spotted smoke in the distance and hurried toward it, suspecting it was from the egg, but the egg had anticipated their move and was already hiding. He was just about to relax when he felt the cold barrel of a gun pressed against his neck. The egg slowly turned, disarming his captor and setting up a trap in the road. Soon, one of the hunter's horses tripped over a tree branch, activating the trap and striking the youngest follower. As the older follower tried to help, the leader, Kraft, shot him dead. This terrified the remaining followers, wondering if they'd meet the same fate, but Kraft promised a bigger reward, and they decided to take another risk. On their way, they encountered a body, one of the escapees the egg had recently killed. The older follower found a bounty notice on him. After seeing the bounty, Kraft prepared to leave but suddenly returned and shot the horse dead. The man was furious but couldn't do anything about it. After a long chase, the egg reached the town but was mistaken for a horse thief. Without a word, the sheriff knocked him unconscious. The bounty hunters soon arrived in town. The egg woke up to find his hands tied, but fortunately, there was only one guard. He tricked the guard and knocked him out. The egg escaped, but the hunters were close behind. They pursued him day and night until the egg was exhausted. When he finally stopped to drink water, his horse collapsed from exhaustion. Though reluctant, the egg slit his horse's belly for survival. When the hunters arrived, they found only a disemboweled horse. Suddenly, the egg emerged from the horse's carcass, attacking one of the hunters from behind. He held a knife to the hunter's throat, demanding their gun. The egg hesitated, knowing the knife was no match for a gun, and was quickly subdued by. The two men wrestled on the ground, but soon the egg gained the upper hand, pinning Kraft to the ground. However, the egg didn't finish him off. Instead, he left a canteen of water and two horses, then rode off into the distance. Kraft eventually regained consciousness, picking up the canteen and his gun to continue the chase. As he set off again, he heard a sound in the distance. The egg, having run out of money, left behind a black horse, never realizing that Kraft would soon catch up to him. After some time, the egg stopped, staring into the endless desert ahead, while Kraft was closing in from behind. The egg feared he might never make it out alive. Just then, a woman appeared, and the egg traded his horse for a single bullet. Kraft soon arrived and used his last bit of water to trade for a gun, which also only had one bullet. Now the two men were evenly matched. Who would be the last one standing? Before long, Kraft caught up to the egg, but before he could attack, the egg fired, hitting Kraft in the abdomen and knocking him to the ground. The egg hesitated, unsure if he should finish him off, ultimately handed his gun to Kraft, urging him to aim and end this grudge. However, Kraft did not pull the trigger.